Hello.
Good morning.
Hello.
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 Morning.
Can you hear me? Perfect.
Yeah, we can hear
Oh,
you.
perfect. Thank you. So, welcome, the 24th of July, 2023, the Delivery Group Weekly, and we can start. A lot of upcoming holidays for August, I can see. And we start to have a discussion point. The first one is from Ahmad. Someone wants to verbalize it or like? I'm gonna go forward with that. So Ahmad had this because he opened an issue some time ago that you might have seen is about how to stay up to date with the risk management changes in the process and tools. Because I guess he had the problem of like some of us sitting in risk management, having a lot of months off of risk management and coming back into risk management where there were some changes in our processes and finding it a problem to keep up to date with which part of the process was different and so on. So he introduced this change log functionality and he highlighted a good candidate for it. Now, I wish I can tell you which is the good candidate for it, but every time I click the link, I get highlighted a different message on Slack. So I have no clue which is the message that Ahmad is pointing to.
So he pointed to the demo, but actually I did have a question because I wonder if the better time is actually when we I don't know, like merge in the documentation, or so in the demo we were talking a bit about the new auto deploy timers, Alessio, that you did the other month. So I wonder, I guess, like what's a good way for us to actually, at the point we're making changes that affect release managers, how do we get those things into the change log, and how do we remember to put those things into the change log?
Well, at least the change log is into release docs, right? So when we are updating the documentation that we did for that change, we could have also added some relevant link to the change at page or some blurb explaining what was happening at the same time. I think the important thing here is that we are not going to have the third merge request for doing something, because one will be the, say, release tools or whatever, the tool that we are going to change. And then we want to document this. So fine, we're going to do release docs. The change log is in release docs. So maybe we just need to get into the habits of actually something that is worth the change log, then it will also be added to the change log in the same merge request.
Anybody else has different opinions of how we could tackle this change log better or differently?
Do we have anything on our MR template? I'm assuming we have an MR template about reminding us to do documentation. Yeah, like should we add it into there?
We have a checkbox on the release tools template that asks us to update documentation in our functionality in release tools is updated or added.
So perhaps an additional checkpoint there, like consider if this is, changes release manager experience. If so, add to the change log.
Yeah, it isn't really much actionable as it is, because oftentimes we split those changes over several merge requests because we do, and then there is a point in time where we say, okay, now is how it should look like, and then is done, right? And then we document it. And so it's really hard. Maybe every time you just say, okay, I will do the documentation later. So it's kind of easier when you're working on the epics, say, adding an issue, part of the epics, which is now I'm gonna write down everything that we changed this time, because I mean, it really depends on the type of changes that you're doing.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of like the engineering FYI idea, where there's sort of this doc and a channel to just add notifications, and everyone knows they should keep up with that channel even if they haven't paid attention to it for a month or two. So maybe it's just, yeah, like kind of creating that sort of mentality and habit around updating the changelog and keeping up with it.
Would it be worth having a prompt on this call for the next few months, where each week we just do a collective, did anything happen that should have gone in the changelog, and then take actions? Because it feels like, you know, either we have to build a habit or we have to put a nudge in a good place, so that we don't have to remember to do this.
Yeah, I think a prompt in the weekly meeting could help.
I'll add something above after the announcements. We could just, because I think it would be helpful to have a kind of collective thing. So if you hear of something that someone shares that you think that was changelog worthy, I think those are the sort of nudges. Like I would like to see that in the changelog, because I think when you're actually in the details, it can be hard to you know, to necessarily realize, oh, that was a significant change for someone who hasn't been a release manager for 3 months. What's it called, this thing? Is this called the release tools changelog, release docs changelog, release managers changelog, something else?
These docs, I think. Okay. Anything extra about this? Amy, I'm asking you because it's going to be me and you. Shall we add this to the template?
I'm just
Or
writing
shall we
it
have
right
a
now.
section at the top?
I'm
Okay,
literally writing
perfect.
on the template right this second. Yeah, I think we should just put it there. So.
Perfect. Thank
I
you.
also think it would be worth, since we are at the end of Q2, this would also probably be a good one for us at the end of Q3 to do a bit of a temperature check on, did it help? Does it add value on its own? Do we need to do anything extra? Because, well, we should probably do that on lots of things, because it'd be great to start removing stuff as well. But I think for this one, something totally new, great to test out. Let's commit to it for 3 months and see how things look.
Okay. And let's move to point B. Skarbek.
Yeah. So speaking of things that we're trying to figure out as far as sharing knowledge for, during the release day tasks, there's a step that was a surprise to Ahmad and I. This is one of the last few steps for the release where we create the protection rules for the 16.2 or the current stable branch. So a favor to ask, Steve or Myra, can either one of you just make sure that we created the rules correctly? Ahmad removed the stable branch rules for the 16.1 stable branch prior to documenting anything. So the step, while clear language-wise, we were just a tad confused because we didn't see what that rule looked like before deletion. So we couldn't just create the protection rules the same way, right? And then the other item I wanted to see, I know there's an epic. I couldn't quickly find it, which is why I'm asking for assistance. I know there's an epic that's supposed to help. Let's remove all the steps from our release major tasks, right? I want to make sure that there's an issue that captures that this should be automated via some sort of chat ops command, and I wanted to make sure that we still had that either prioritized or what have you.
Can we have a first minimum iteration maybe to document which are the right permissions to add for the next, when we are going to remove now 16.3 and we add 16.4. So to be sure that we can read something in release docs that we know which kind of permission we need to add. I think that would be probably smaller than automating it, but I agree that automating it probably would be highly beneficial if possible.
Yeah, for sure, I can take a follow-up on that. I already reviewed the stable branches rules for GitLab and Omnibus, and they look okay. And I think there is an issue for automation. I don't remember, but if not, I can create it, and I can also update the documentation with guidance about this.
Thank you, Myra. I just couldn't quickly find an existing issue or the epic that I know this would have fallen under, so I just wanted to
This
ask
isn't
about
in
it.
one of our epics at the moment, or it won't be in an active epic because we're just working on the security release. But I
Gotcha.
think this is an interesting one. Like, I think if there's something we can do, especially as we go into sort of the early part of the quarter, I guess, like we could pull in some extra bugs and do some improvements. But I do think it's an interesting one. So I know, Steve, we've chatted quite a bit around the security release, and once we've got the kind of pipelines and some automation in place, what we're hoping is that kind of drives our future behavior on not adding manual tasks. What we haven't got prioritized anywhere is doing anything like this to the monthly release. So that would probably be worth doing as well at some point.
We have, was it Sam that opened up an issue that's setting forward some guidelines that we as a team should follow? Like, I wonder
Yes.
if not adding checkboxes should, if it's not already on there, not adding manual tasks to our release procedure should be one of those guiding principles.
It totally should. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Like that MR for people.
It's already there. I think it's the first one. It's the first point. We always want to reduce work for release managers, try to remove tasks or automate them. Be very cautious about introducing new tasks without removing something else.
And to give a little context on this, so this SMR on the guiding principles is something that Skarbek, Alessio, myself, Michele, Sam, we started chatting about last week. This is to start to help us move from where we are today to where we want to get to in 3 years. It's all sort of tied to the strategy stuff that we're working on. And what we are not going to be able to do is just sort of turn 90-degree direction overnight and immediately build the tools we want. And that's okay. So what we were thinking with these guiding principles is to put some stuff in place which allows everybody to kind of maintain like decent levels of independence. Hopefully that's the aim, and allow you when you're going through your work and you're making decisions either by designing stuff or implementing stuff, you've got a few guiding principles in place which help you make a decision which is still moving towards the future we want to get to, and not make you kind of have to keep checking in against like a bigger strategy doc or checking in on kind of up-to-date discussion things. So the guiding principles will be there. We've just got this, we're going for the first iteration, so if anyone wants to add anything or comment, please just jump in. It won't be a full list, and I'm sure we'll want to amend these over time, but these are kind of the first ones that sprung to mind for us to hopefully give a little bit of guidance on the sorts of decisions that will help us get to where we want to get to.
Thank you, Amy.
Cool, great. And Myra,
Anything
thanks. Yeah, if you pull the issue, then I'm happy we can have a chat later this week and figure out like how do we get this into orchestration in the next few weeks.
Anything else to add on this? If not, release managers. So now we have this. I know you may have seen the message on G-Delivery. We actually moved everything outside of the template for the simple reason that we would like to start to avoid to share the screen from the meeting notes, since we had some problems in the past that, I mean, I've been shared already last week. So if someone can start to share a screen directly from their book, I think it's a better approach.
Yeah, so I'll share my screen because I was release manager last week. And if you haven't seen already, the security team, or rather the IT team, are implementing something related to the fact that phone numbers were being accidentally shared, which is really nice. So I'm happy to see action being taken from that front. But as far as things that we want to see, last week, at most, we did not promote around 5 packages, but we stayed around 3 and 4 for the majority of last week. So I think this is fantastic, especially when compared to our normal, which is around 6, I believe. So I think we did pretty good promoting packages all last week. We did not have any blockers, no change requests blocked us. We did have some auto deploy picks because people did alert us that there were some bugs that were being found. So we just wanted to make sure those got plugged in before certain deployments. I think one of these was at least specifically towards a 16.2 release where a bug was found in staging. No harm was being done to .com. It was just causing a lot of errors, and we were able to get that picked in before we started the 16.2 release procedure. So all the deploy-wise, we did pretty good. Deployment frequency, this is reflective of the prior chart. So, you know, averaging 6 deploys, I guess we hit 9 deploys one time. So last week we were doing pretty good. As far as the lead time for changes, this was also a little bit lower. Like we breached 8.2, 8.9 hours for a few of those days. So this is turning out wonderful. I think last week was one of the greatest weeks in my opinion. And then just showcasing that we did not have any blockers last week in our review. That's all I've got to share. Does anyone have any questions?
I do have a question. So do you think that this correlated to maybe many people being in PTO, or with the, I mean, all the extra care we were having because of the, we were not meeting the SLA. So what do you think that was the root cause for this great number?
I do not have an answer for that, but I will say as far as the keenness of trying to prevent availability was a pressure point for us as release managers. Limiting ourselves from running the PDM twice a week was a mild impedance. We still ended up running the PDM more than the 2 allocated times that we were provided. And it did kind of raise our stress level simply because we're trying to reduce the risk of the release, but we're also trying to reduce the risk of .com. Those are in direct conflict with the way that we expect .com to be our guinea pig for testing to make sure changes all work. And part of that is requiring that post-deploy migrations are run. So I do think there's conflict there, and I don't think I did a good enough job expressing that concern when we raised up this issue to talk about this and determining the schedule. So I think in the future, if this happens again, I just want to stress that a little bit more to see if maybe we could get some more leeway during release time. It wasn't a huge concern. It was just a concern that we had to pay attention to, and it just drove up our stress a little bit. So it wasn't terrible. It was just annoying, I think. But no, Alessio, I do not have any idea as to why we were more successful this last week. I think mainly due to lack of incidents, for one, and QA was actually successful for the majority of runs last week, which I was greatly appreciative of. We ended up spending more time and effort on pre-prod than QA and say staging or production, which was really nice.
Cool. I was actually trying to figure out from the merge request analytics page, which is one of the other pages we usually don't look at in the metrics from GitLab, if there was actually, because we look at those number but we don't look at the underlying value, which is how many changes we are bringing in each week, right? So, but it looks like, so just quickly share what I'm looking at because I've never done this before. So this, let me just put it a bit wider. So basically this is here, right? So it's analyze, merge request analytics. And I was trying to, this is the last year. I don't know if there is an easy way to just shrink it down to say 1 month and see, oh, maybe just as easy as doing this. Because I wanted to see if we can get better numbers. Yeah, kind of, right? What am I looking at here?
You're looking
I
at two
have no
data
idea.
points that are connected with a line.
Yeah. Now, I would hope that we could have something by week, right? So if we had data points per
Yeah.
week, then we can just say, trying to figure out if it makes sense. But maybe this is just doing month by month. Okay,
Would this
I
be
tried.
in Sisense?
Does it? I don't think. I think in Sisense we are accumulating by just MTTP.
Darn.
Average max. This is. I think we can't go below the month here. I would try to find those numbers because it's interesting. Okay. Let's stop my rant.
I also wanted to make a comment about the PDM execution, mostly for Steve and Ruben's benefit. So we are trying to protect rollback windows, but we also do control this schedule. So don't risk releases for that. We were asked, like, what can delivery contribute to availability? And the only thing we can really contribute in sort of 1 week's notice is rollback windows. So that's really kind of the background. So please do update the proposed plan with what you need for your week, with trying to balance those two things as best you can. If you need to change it, that's also fine. What we're basically trying to do is be able to, in the event someone asks us for a rollback, hopefully be able to say yes. That's all people are expecting from us.
Sorry, I'm coming back because I found those information. There is another page. Just so that's another thing. It's in here. Analyze insight, and there are this merge request dashboard. So this seems to be week by week, isn't it? Yeah, it's week by week. So it looks like that the numbers were kind of in line. This is merged, so it's absolutely in line with previous weeks. I mean, we're talking 478, 407. I mean, okay. So I would say this, yeah. So I don't see any particular change here to just make for the difference in the number of packages that we actually managed to deploy, or the yeah, we just did great for other reasons.
The last comment I want to make about the PDM is that it has not been run since Wednesday of last week. And the last time I looked at the dashboard, there were 8 pending migrations. I did see a notification that this, okay. And I did see a notification this morning that there's one that's expected to take a long time to run. So whoever's running it next, use caution.
14 migrations now.
Where did you see that notification?
I'll see if I can't find it. I saw it first thing my morning, and I don't know where that tab went, so I'll have to go find it.
Don't get scared by those numbers. So this is something that I realized during my last shift, and I forgot about it. So the CI decomposition effort just broke our metrics, because now every pending migration is counted 3 times. Because basically, when we just run the Rails command to see the status of the migrations, it is putting the output for each database. And so most of those migration will only apply to one of the 3 databases. So just as a rough number, divide by 3.
I question the accuracy of that. And I say that because there was a migration I was paying attention to last week for the 16.2 release. and the value in our dashboard was read 1, and I was expecting 1 to run.
One strange. So I do remember that in my shift there was some very high numbers, and I was a bit scared, and so I went into the machine looking at the output of the command, and basically was printing the line more than once because there was this main CI and embedding. So I don't know.
Well, either way, if the metric is wrong, we need to fix it. If it's not wrong, we should at least get some clarification.
Yeah, the problem is that we can't say if something should be up. So that's the point. Inside the migration, there is something that tell us what if it affects one database or another one, but the Rails engine outside doesn't know about it. So when you ask, is it running? Does it have to run or not? To just tell you if this doesn't run on this database, so it has to run. But it will be no hope on many of those because basically it's just it's the same schema, but data will only be in one of the 3 databases.
So this has happened before when they introduced the decomposition database and they split the migration in main and CI, the post-deployment migration count basically duplicated because it was counting the ones for main and the ones for CI. Yeah. So as a boring solution, what we did was to split the metric. So there is like, if you see the dashboard source, you're going to see like, this is the metric and this is basically like split in 2. So perhaps we need to check if the numbers of pending migrations are now correlated to the new databases or whatever, if now we have 3 and then readjust the metric again.
Who's going to take an action to spin that issue up and ask the database team?
I could at least get an issue created to at least look into this.
Super, let's go back. I had one final question about the release manager stuff. So last week we had a special issue to get pre into a tested state. So do an auto deploy to pre and run the QA tests before the release managers needed the environment. Was that useful? Is it something we want to repeat for next month?
2 things. One, yes, it was useful and beneficial. Vladimir was able to successfully roll and auto deploy out appropriately. We did end up creating a multitude of RCs due to varying issues, but for the most part, the RCs all passed QA after a few retries. The second thing I want to mention is that we do have a potential performance issue with the database in pre-prod, which may be causing a little bit of pain for some QA runs. Just GitLab returning 502s instead of either pass or fail on the actual test. So we're not performing a test, we're failing because GitLab is not responding appropriately. We have an open issue for that I performed a very, very rough preliminary investigation on. So we just need to dig into that. But along that same line, we do have issues that are, I'm trying to work with Michele to potentially schedule those issues for the next quarter where we're segregating pre-prod out from our current testing that's being done within our team, which was the root cause of one of the preliminary issues we had during the June release. So hopefully stuff like that gets resolved between those 2 groups of work.
Oh, okay, I will get another issue ready to go for 16.3. And system as a collective, are you on board? You've got all the other issues in the right places?
Yes, the one that Skarbek was speaking about right now, we are still creating some of them with the details. This is also part of the discussion that we had also with Graham and the other issue about what to do about pre-prod, the release resistance and so on. So we set on option B, but I guess what exactly need to be doing is something that we need to work on the issues.
About the migrations, the post-deployment migrations, I can actually see 14 post-deployment migrations, and those get repeated. So the job log shows there are 28 migrations, but there are actually 14. So I think the metric is correct.